Welcome to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, where history meets prophecy. I am Elder Michael.
I'm Officer Charmain, and today we have with us again our wonderful Elder Jeffrey.
Hey, thank you guys for having me back.
Oh, I like your background.
Yeah.
You can have it as well. Just go like that and it'll happen. Hold it.
Oh, not for me, I guess. Oh, well, there you go.
Hold it for a minute.
No.
Oh, well.
You, Elder Michael, you're special.
Sorry.
You're special, Elder Michael.
He's a special one, so.
That's okay. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Well, just want to thank everyone for joining us today and welcome back. Remember that this is an interactive session, so please remember to like, to comment, to share, to subscribe, to donate. Your donations are always welcome. Just want to welcome some of our usuals, such as James and Pansy, Corrine, Angela, we have Felicia. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and we're going to have another wonderful session. But before we do, I just want to remind you, because what we're going to be talking about today, which is we're going to go do a deep dive into 70 AD. This is closely related to the lesson last week and even the previous week.
Yes.
But please have a look at the lesson that was done last week, which is on the difference between the Israelite and the Israeli. We want to make sure that we have to change the narrative. We have to make sure that everybody has the same type of perception in their mind of who our people was, is, and are today. We are the people of the book. We are the Israelites. We have the hair. We have the skin. And even though we've said that's not the most important point, it is a point regardless. It's a point to be aware of, right? So we're not focused on race and racism and all that fun stuff, but identity is crucial.
And also, Charmaine, to your point, we're not really making a change. We are making a correction. The correction.
Yeah, I like that. Important. Yes, absolutely. So just remember, this is who we are speaking about. So when we speak about these events in history, you can think about your family, your mom, your dad, your brothers, sisters, uncles, aunties, cousins, whatever, and imagine them being in that state, or even yourself being in that state, being in that situation, because it was people that looked like us that was back then in that situation.
Our ancestors, yeah.
Yes. So anyways, we want to make sure that, we have that in our mind. Like I said, look at the video that was out there last week, which is called The Difference Between the Israelis and the Israelites. You can actually find the article on our Elder Shadrach's site, which is shadrachporter.com. So you can go there as well and download the article, have a read of it, even distribute it to your friends and family as well if they need quick reference to go to. So without further ado, we have another video, another introductory video. So let's begin with that.
Yes.
Story of 70 AD, Jerusalem's darkest hour. Peace, everyone. Welcome to another episode of History Meets Prophecy on the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries YouTube channel. Today, we are delving into another inspiring chapter of Israelite history. We are going to discuss the untold story of 70 AD, in particular, Jerusalem's darkest hour, which includes the final dispersal of the Israelites and the banishment from their homeland in 70 AD during the destruction of the Second Temple. Join us as we peel back the layers of history to reveal the untold story of Jerusalem's darkest hour. Part 1. The Siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD, a turning point in Israelite history. The Siege of Jerusalem. The Siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD is one of the most significant events in Israelite history. It was a culmination of a series of conflicts between the Israelite population in Judea, which were black-skinned men and women often referred to as Jews or Black Jews, and the Roman Empire. This event led to the destruction of the Second Temple, a pivotal spiritual symbol for the Israelites. It also initiated a series of consequences that reshaped the course of Israelite history. The siege of Jerusalem was part of the First Israelite-Roman War, which began in 66 AD. The war was a result of a long-standing resentment against Roman rule among the Israelite population in Judea. The immediate cause of the war was a Greek sacrifice of birds in front of a local synagogue, which the Israelites found offensive. This incident led to protests, escalating to widespread violence. The walls of Jerusalem. The walls of Jerusalem, particularly in ancient times, were renowned for their strength and were considered by many to be nearly impregnable. Throughout history, Jerusalem has been a fortified city, with its walls serving as key defences against numerous invasions and sieges. However, by 70 AD, the Roman legions, led by future Emperor Titus, besieged Jerusalem, the centre of the Israelite resistance. The siege lasted for several months, with the Romans eventually breaching the city's third wall, then the second, and finally the first. The destruction of the Second Temple. The most significant and devastating act was the destruction of the Second Temple. The temple was a place of worship and a symbol of Israelite identity and nationalism. Its destruction on the 9th of Ab, which is the 5th month of the Israelite calendar, July or August of the Gregorian calendar, marked a catastrophic moment for the Israelites. The diaspora. Following the fall of Jerusalem, there was a massive dispersal of the Israelites, commonly known as the diaspora. Many Israelites were killed or sold into slavery, while others fled to various parts of the Roman Empire and beyond. This dispersal marked the beginning of a long period of Israelite life outside their ancestral homeland. Measures and controls. In the aftermath of the siege, the Roman authorities took measures to prevent any future rebellion. One such measure was the command that Israelites should not return to Jerusalem. Additionally, the Romans sought to diminish the Israelite connection to the city by changing its name. Jerusalem was renamed Aelia Capitolina, and the province of Judea was renamed Palestina in an attempt to minimize Israelite identification with the land. The burning and lockdown. The Romans did not stop at renaming the city. They also burned much of it and instituted a lockdown to control the movement of the remaining inhabitants. The lockdown was part of the Roman strategy to suppress any potential uprisings and to maintain strict control over the region. The enslavement of the Israelites. One of the most tragic outcomes of the siege was the enslavement of a large number of Israelites. Thousands of Israelites were sold into slavery, and many were taken to Rome. The enslaved Israelites were used for various purposes, including labor in construction projects and entertainment in arenas. The building of the Colosseum. Interestingly, the construction of the Colosseum in Rome, one of the most iconic landmarks of the ancient world, is linked to the siege of Jerusalem. The Colosseum was funded in part by the spoils taken from the temple in Jerusalem. Israelite slaves were also used in its construction. The Colosseum would become a symbol of Roman power and might, standing in stark contrast to the destroyed temple in Jerusalem. Prisoners in Rome. An additional tragic aspect of the aftermath of the siege was the fate of some Israelite prisoners who were taken to Rome and enslaved. Historical accounts suggest that many of these prisoners were forced to participate in gladiatorial games. Among the most harrowing of these spectacles were instances where Israelite captives were fed to lions as a form of entertainment for the Roman populace, particularly in venues like the Colosseum, which the Israelite slaves built. This cruel fate symbolized the extent of Roman brutality and served as a public demonstration of the consequences of defying the Roman Empire. The Dispersal. Following the destruction of the Temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Israelites embarked on a widespread diaspora. This journey saw them spread across the Roman Empire, finding new homes in Europe, notably Spain and Portugal, where they were referred to as Jews or Black Jews. Over time, and even prior to 70 AD, their journey extended to South Asia, Arabia, and various regions of the African continent. A significant and often overlooked chapter of this dispersal was their eventual settlement in West Africa. Here, the Israelites became an integral part of the local cultures. However, this journey took a tragic turn with the advent of the transatlantic slave trade in 1619, which forcibly uprooted many from these communities to the Americas. Part 2. Prophecy. The Untold Story of 70 AD, Jerusalem's darkest hour, will take us through the heartbreak and the heroism that defined an era. This chapter of our Israelite history, though marked by loss, also paves the way for new beginnings and a legacy that continues to inspire through history and prophecy. Thank you for watching this introductory clip. Now let's delve into today's discussion.
That was great. That was great. I loved it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your support in doing this as well. Well, there you have it. And we're going to go deeper into this, go into a little bit more details in regards to what actually took place. So that was just to give you an overview. But yes, let's do a deep dive into this. Let's have our first slide, my dear moderator. And by the way, we have Abby back with us today.
Yay. Hey, Abby.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's get to the first slide. Here we go. All right. Elder Jeffrey, do you want to take this one away?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. All right. Our rejection of the Christ. Pilate saith unto them, What shall I do then with Jesus, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, Let him be crucified. And the governor said, Why? What evil has he done? But they cried out the more, saying, Let him be crucified. Then answered all the people and said, His blood be on us and on our children. Absolutely. I think it's a pivotal moment that's happened in our history. And we talk about the prophecy and understanding kind of what happens next. This verse is very, very pivotal. And I think some people jump over it or maybe don't even bring it out that much when we see that. But to understand that, as you mentioned also, Charmain, us through our forefathers, are actually, sort of responsible for this, and there are consequences to our actions. And so I think this discussion that we're having today and really calling out 70 AD is so important because, we have the scriptures, we have the First Testament, we have the Second Testament, but then what's the connection between that and now? And this verse and then what we're going to talk about now is that connection. So it's good, it's important, not just good, I think necessary for us to understand how things happen to bring us to where we are today.
Yeah. And what you mentioned is a very good point as well, because we look at all these atrocities and yes, they are unimaginably terrible. It's the worst that we could have possibly have gone through. Terrifying, horrible. It was traumatic. It was very bad. You've not heard of another people that's gone through this to this degree. In addition to this, you clearly see that this was our fault as well. We played a big part in this, unfortunately, but there you have it. You know, what did our forefathers say? Let it be
Us
on our
and our
our,
children.
our children's heads. They didn't
Yeah.
leave it with them. They had to curse their entire bloodline. So
Well, in addition to that, Officer Charmain, when we reject the Christ, when our it is a very, very serious mistake that we've made. And what I mean by that is the fact that to reject the only begotten Son of the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob is to reject the God of Israel also.
Mhm.
So, and you don't want to, like, that makes absolutely no sense. That's like saying you don't exist, because he's the one that created the first man and woman and from whom we came. So you don't want to reject him and reject his wisdom, reject his protection and his guidance and all of those things.
yes, no,
And
absolutely.
if I could, there's many times throughout the scriptures which prophesy about what will happen, what we're speaking about. And there's one when Jesus Christ mentions in Luke, and it's chapter 19, 43 to 44. And it says, and when he, this is Jesus Christ, was coming near to Jerusalem, he beheld the city and he wept over it. He wept over it, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things that belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment around you, surround you, close you in on every side, level you and your children within you to the ground. And they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not know the time of
Oh,
your visitation.
look at, is that not prophecy? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. You know what? That deserves fire signs. That deserves seven.
For
That
sure.
is prophecy like you've never heard it. Because when you hear what happened in 70 AD, then you know what? You need to keep that in mind. Oh my goodness,
Mhm.
that is phenomenal.
For sure.
Absolutely phenomenal.
For
That is
sure.
crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That, and actually, it's really sad. It's extremely sad. It's actually very emotional.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
He
Wow.
wept.
I refer to it as fighting with your shadow. First of
Mhm.
all, it makes no sense. And secondly, you can't win.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure. You know what's interesting too about that is how the God of Israel takes the negative but makes it the positive, right? So the negative part is the consequence. Like we know that Jesus had to die, but woe to him whose hand he had to die by.
Right.
But he had to die, and the blood had to be shed as the
Yes.
final sacrifice.
Yes.
And so, in their words, not knowing what they're saying in a similar fashion to how in the First Testament, how the custom was, you had the sacrifice and you had the blood that would be applied on the altar and would be put upon all these various things in order as that whole process. Here they are saying, let his blood be upon us and our children, so that on the positive sense, so that that blood can then be utilized as the final sacrifice. I know that wasn't their intention, but I'm just saying, in the words, that is what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
wow.
interesting how how you can see it both ways, but
Yeah.
But,
nonetheless
yeah.
you have to pay the consequence.
Yeah.
But again, we are remembering. Remember what the people look like. You know, even if it means put a mirror in front of you.
Yeah.
That's what the people looked like, right?
Right.
Put the mirror in front
Yes.
of you, so you
Yeah.
can actually see who is actually relating to. It's not
Yeah.
relating to anybody else. No other people. Only the Israelites.
That's right.
God's
And
people.
you don't need a rocket scientist to define that. Just look at the behavior. The other people who are claiming to be us, they're disciplined and well mannered.
Unified. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But now
Yep.
look at us. We're all
Right.
over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
And a part of that is, when it speaks about, how, when the promises that were given to us in the covenant, it was told to us the blessings and the curse.
Yeah.
And these blessings would, be upon you and your children. Or if you disobey, the curses would be upon you or your children, right? And we see that one way we see that is how that punishment continues to perpetuate from generation to generation. Like, the book of Judges is a good example, right? It just perpetuates from generation to generation. Then we have the carrying away in Babylon, right? And then we have the whole thing what we did a couple weeks ago with the Greeks and how they're, some oppressed. And then we have now with Rome we're going to talk about. And then we continue forward to in this new Egypt. And we see so many similarities in how the enslavement and the punishment and techniques of punishment takes place over and over and over and over again to us, And so like you're saying about it's not some other people, it's not whatever, it's our forefathers. It's what's happening to us over and over again. And by looking at our condition and even our characteristics and our behaviors, we can see who these people are. You read the story, look at it, and then look around the world. Who does this fit? And yeah, like you said, look in the mirror because it fits us, as far as who we are as a people.
It really does. It really does. This is us. And again, we remind you that, when we look at the Bible, the King James Version of the Bible is our historical book. It's our religious book. It is our family book, our cultural book. It's our everything. Yeah. It was written about us. It was written for us, and it was written by us. Yes. So remember, this we need to hold dearly. We are fortunate enough to be able to recognize certain events in history and see how it actually applied back to us. And as you said, Elder Michael, we are correcting the errors that are out there, so here we go.
Fixing our minds, reminding ourselves in our minds. Yeah.
Just go to the second slide. Yeah.
Yes, let's have the next slide. There was something on the screen before, but I don't have my right glasses with me.
Oh,
there was something on the screen before. But anyways, yeah, there was a comment before. This one's not very good. Okay.
This is from Felicia?
Felicia. Yeah. She said, but also for our sin, there must be blood. So for what they did, they pronounced their own judgment. The God of Israel fulfill it. I think that's similar to what you were saying, Elder Jeffrey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Next slide. So here we have, I like this. I actually stole this from our Elder Jeffrey. I like this part of your slide. It's like, yes, all these people wanted for crimes against the Israelites. Yes, look at the psychopaths and robbers and murderers. I love it.
Yes. I know, during a couple of years ago, there was the big push in America to kind of get rid of all of the Confederate statues, because, it's oppressive history. But I remember Elder Michael was saying, like, no, we need evidence. When it's time to pay and to get the resolution, we need evidence. So keep these there. Just put the right history to it so we can understand who are the perpetuators of our oppression. So keep it there. Just let's tell the right history about who
100% we are. Elder Jeffrey, 100%, because you cannot go to court and file a claim against somebody and you don't have the evidence to substantiate your claim.
That's right.
So when you pull down all of these statutes, then where's the evidence?
Where's evidence? Yeah.
Not only are there no evidence, you're going to forget what actually happened.
Yeah.
Forget what took place, what happened against us, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a constant reminder of what took place, what happened to us.
Yes.
And these people are so dumb and stupid. They're putting up the evidence for you. And so let them do that. What I like also is that it's one family who is committing all the acts of oppression. Mm-hmm. Now they're all from the same group, if you can call it that, the same Gentile family. And even today in the land, there's still the same Gentile descendants, mm-hmm. Ashkenazi, mm-hmm. So there's something very fascinating about that as well.
Mm-hmm. 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 And there's many places in the scripture that speak about the prophecy that was going to happen. And then again in Luke 21:24, again, this is Jesus Christ speaking. He says, and they, us in Jerusalem, will fall by the edge of the sword and will be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Right. And so one of the points that always try to specifically until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Right. Same thing with the whole grafting and thing. Right. So that's repeated over and over again. So it's not forever. Right. So the conditions that we're in are not forever. They feel that way because no one wants to go through this at all.
And you know what? Just to go to that point, Elder Jeffrey, just to even remind everyone from last week, we saw, even from before that as well, we saw how the Ashkenazi, those that call themselves Ashkenazi Jews, they are actually from the line of Japheth. And
Yes.
Japheth is the Isles of the Gentiles.
Yes.
The Isles of the Gentiles came from Japheth. So again, we read that prophecy. It didn't talk about the Gentiles being against the Gentiles. It spoke about the Gentiles being against Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
That is again is manifested on a daily basis. But what I also like is the fact that I think there was a British guy that says all the world's a stage and men are but mere actors, and I find that fascinating. And I said a long time ago, what he didn't say is who wrote the script and to whom did he give the script, right? So our God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob wrote that script, and he gave it to us. So they can do the acting if they want for their part. Then when it comes to us, we go on stage and do our part. So I find that very fascinating. And that's how I look at the whole historical and the whole world framework unfolding as a play.
Right. So we're laying in on this today, and we're going to the nitty gritty. We have to make sure that we touch on these points to make sure we bring this home so that everybody understands who we are. Identity. Our identity was stolen. Look, see that robber? The robber that
we are, Officer Charmain, and whose we are. You see?
Yes, who do we belong to? We belong
to. Who is our father?
Absolutely. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. This is our Father, right?
Yes. Look at that. How does Elder Michael you get to do that?
It's not happening.
No, it's broken. It's broken.
You have to have the right fingers.
That's it. It's you, Elder Michael.
He's
holy fingers, okay?
Elder Michael, he's just special. Absolutely.
He is. Wow.
Anyways.
So if we go into a little bit about the history with Caligula and all them.
Go on then. Yes, let's do that.
Yeah, I think George Santos is saying that the Arabs had a hand in our enslavement as well. That is true. The Arabs had a hand in our suffering. That is true. And as is written in Psalms 83, there is a confederacy. Mm-hmm. All the nations joined together against us. Mm-hmm. And that should say something unique and special about us, that the whole world is against us. Could it be the God that we serve, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? Something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Can we bring back the other slide again?
Yes, let's get the slide back.
Yeah.
Go on, Elder Jeffrey.
So you start with Caligula, right? So, Emperor of Rome. Before we get to Caligula, understand, piggybacking what we did prior during the time of the Greeks. As we know, Greek was the world power. Eventually, Rome came in and transitioned over, and that's history in itself. But we, as Israelites, we're there and we're involved in all of that. We're a part of that, and we talked a little bit about that when we talked about the Maccabees and our defending our homeland against the Greek and Hellenistic incursion into our culture, into our land. And so, interesting enough, during that transition, we were friends with Rome, right? Because it's almost like my enemy's enemy, right? And so, as Rome is gaining power and we're fighting against the Greek power at that time, there's letters going back and forth between the Maccabees and the Romans, building a friendship and along the way. And so when Rome finally comes into power, a few of our individuals, a few of us stay connected with Rome, and it's not too bad. I mean, when it first starts out, Octavian.
So just to let to give everybody an idea of what's actually going on. Remember, we had Paul, his name was Saul. His name was sent to Paul, right? Yes. Remember, he also had that relationship with the Romans,
Yes.
and that's how he was able to do what he was able to do. Right? He was like one of the top guys, in our world, but he was against us. So he was working for the Romans, but he had that connection, that relationship with them. So that's just to give you an idea of what was going on in that period.
Yeah. And another one that worked with them quite closely was Herod, King Herod.
Yeah.
King Herod, right?
Edomite.
So he was an Edomite.
Yeah.
And, it's a story in there as well about Edomites and during the Maccabees period and how that was. So he ended up being friends with Rome. We're talking about Julius Caesar. We're talking about Mark Antony. We're talking about Cleopatra. All these individuals are contemporary with Herod. And through politics and longer story than that, he ends up being placed in power. Again, not by the people, not by the God of Israel, but by Rome, right? And so Rome's in power, and he's on power. And it was very difficult for us to accept him as king because, like you said, he's an Edomite. So a couple of the things that he does in order to try to appease the people and to legitimize his power, well, he killed a lot of his individuals who tried to threaten it. But other than that, he married a descendant of the Maccabees, ended up being his wife. And he also went on a very large building program in building very significant cities all throughout Israel, big building program. And one of the biggest ones is the temple and the Temple Mount. And that ended up being a huge project to the point that it was like one of the talks of the ancient world, right? So, remember we had Solomon's temple, Babylon came and destroyed it because of our disobedience, and Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed it. We were in captivity in Babylon for 70 years, and then we came back and rebuilt under Ezra and Nehemiah. So what they rebuilt was definitely something that was we're thankful for, but it was nothing on the level of what Solomon had done originally. Herod built something huge. I mean, when you read the descriptions of it, it was like.
And don't forget that also in that temple as well was desecrated with pig's blood.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So that the pig's blood was sacrificed on the altar.
Yep.
It was a mess.
No, for sure. And so Herod rebuilt it. He tried to make peace with the legitimate Israelites and the priesthood and all those individuals and try to do that. And so again, everything's not perfect, but things are okay with Rome because Herod is taking care of everything. Eventually, when Caligula comes into power, things totally change. He despises Israelites. I think if you have noticed Caligula, he's a sick person. There's different things that he did, was very, very sick. And there's like movies out there about him. But a part of it is thinking of himself as a god to the point where he wanted to make sure his statue was in every single province throughout the Roman Empire. And he also was going to put it also into the temple in Jerusalem. Before that, and so one of your individuals, Philo from Alexandria, he was in a delegation to try to go talk to Caligula to try to listen, since you've come into power, there's been a lot of unrest in Alexandria, in Jerusalem, everywhere we are. The non-Israelites were oppressing us in a lot of different ways, and he wouldn't hear them. He didn't care. He didn't like us at all. And so he implemented a lot of oppressive things against. So he comes up because he sets this sort of sentiment throughout the Roman Empire about us as being these, difficult people who don't want to fall in line, who follow this crazy philosophy, who's, just trying not to, be, royal good Roman citizens. And it just sets up that whole sentiment. And so it's under that then we start to get into the next individual who's kind of takes liberties in that environment to be able then to, do what he did, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah. Right. I think to help what you were saying, Ella Jeffrey, is at Alexandria, there was this big school and this big library where all the philosophers would go to study. Mm-hmm. And when they started to study, and at that time, they had the Septuagint, which was the Israelite scriptures that were translated into the Greek language. And they were confused because they couldn't fully comprehend our holy scriptures. And so there's a lot of philosophical speculation that occurred. All the philosophers that you can imagine either were educated there or got some education from there. Yeah. So all of that then clashed.
which is Egypt, by the way. I just want to mention that's Egypt.
Yes.
That's Egypt, right? That's okay.
Right. That clashed with what our forefathers were teaching from Jerusalem. And then, of course, like you said, we ended up in Babylon, and then you have the Edomites from whom we get the Khazars today, partially anyway, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole lot of confusion. The Romans now, descended from the Greeks, they got into that mess. And like you said, they picked a friend who was Herod, and he did a good job and trying to rebuild things. But again, the comprehension of that covenant and the Holy Scriptures, they could not really grasp that. So hence a lot of the confusion that we see even today.
And to that point, Caligula, so sick, crazy, he hated us, but secretly, like you said, he admired us. Because one of the things that he was trying to do towards the end, he only ruled for 5 years, but one of the things he was trying to do, he was going to move the seat of power from Rome to Alexandria. That was one of the things he was going to do. And it's almost like, to Egypt, right? And that was like the last straw, I think. And, they end up assassinating him before he could do, a few of those things. But he sets up that sort of stage of that animosity towards us as a people. And how it is, the trickle down type of thing, and so everywhere feels liberty, they can just do whatever they want to us, and there'll be no repercussions on them.
And one of the things you also mentioned when you talk about the seat of power, what they were looking at is they understood us to be a powerful people, right? A powerful people, so they wanted the power that was demonstrated through our God.
Yeah.
So this is, as you said, he hated us, but he admired us at the same time, secretly. Even like today, a lot of people do the same thing. They hate us and they admire us. They hate us, but they want to be like us.
Right. You see that 100%.
To add to that confusion, also back then you had the Nazarenes, which was an Israelite group that after the apostles had passed, the Nazarenes in North Africa, they took over the teaching of the doctrine, and places like in Carthage and so forth, right? So, and there was a dominant clash there between the forefathers of Christianity and our Israelite descendants from the apostles, because they were one thing was being said, and even to the point where Rome got their bishop that he was appointed by the Israelites in North Africa. So these are things that people need to look into to flesh out some of the confusion of that Roman era.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's get back into the 70 AD, because we have quite a bit to cover some really important points here. Okay.
So we get to the next person, right? And this is, I'm not pronouncing it right, Gaius Florus. Is that right? Gaius Florus.
Yeah.
So he's the proctor in Rome. So Herod is, for a time, is able to control a little bit, what's happening in Israel. But there's a lot of division. This goes back to the culture of the people. A lot of division, infighting that's happening. Not against Israel and Rome, Israel against Israel, right? We talked about this before. We have the Pharisees, the Sadducees, you have the Zealots, you have a lot of different groups that are like, it's not just a ideological distinction. There's like sometimes violence against each other, and that comes out a few times, even in the scriptures, right? There's a time when where Paul is brought in Jerusalem, and they're trying to show that he is teaching against the Moses, and while he's sort of like on trial, he sees that there are both Sadducees and Pharisees in the audience, and he starts to say, "Hey, I'm being persecuted because I'm a Pharisee," and then it causes a big uproar to the point that everything is over, and it's like a riot, and they have to pull him out to save him. And anyway, so there's big divisions inside, to the point at times delegates of Israelites end up going to Rome to say, "Hey, listen, can you please help us against this Herod guy, because he's not doing well." So anyway, Rome gets tired that Herod, and eventually his children, which he ends up delegating to, is not able to control things. So they set up governors over us, and one of the examples of that governors is Pontius Pilate, which we read what he said in the very first slide. A few others come after him, and one of them is this individual, and he, following Caligula's lead, also doesn't like us and hates us, and he does something where he actually boldly goes into our temple and actually takes money out of the treasury and says this is for Rome, and goes in and starts stealing stuff from us. And that triggers, they say that, like, it's almost like, things are happening along the way, but there's like the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's one of them. So they end up mocking him, making fun of him. He ends up retaliating by crucifying a couple of us. And then that goes into a full-blown riot. What happens is that to try to quench that riot, a legion of Roman soldiers in Syria, 30,000 people, whatever, come down to try to quench everything. This is around 66 AD, and they're not successful because we are like, pushing them off, and they decide to, like, well, let's retreat, let's wait for reinforcements, and then we'll come back. But during their retreat, we actually ambush them and we kill over 6,000 of them and totally decimate that whole legion. That word gets around Rome, and they're like, oh my goodness, how are these little people who, has never been a speck, never been too much of a thought on the Roman mind, is now like totally decimating, our, big army. And so that's when they say, you know what, let's send the big guns to make sure not just that we destroy what's going on there, but send a message throughout the whole Roman Empire that if you dare stand up against us, that we're going to quench them, So they send their biggest general for this, and that's where General Vespasian comes in. And he is sent over in order to come and take care of this Israelite problem that's happening in the Jewish, in this province here under Rome. So let me pause there a second. Is that thoughts, questions on that?
No, keep going.
Okay.
This goes into what we're actually talking about.
Absolutely.
Actually, there was one point, because what I also heard as well is, this is what was mentioned in the introductory video, is that there was a sacrifice that was actually done in front of the temple.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The people there is like, why you guys are just like taking the mick. You're really pushing stuff, right? You have all this leeway to do all these things, and this is what you're doing right in front of our temple.
Yeah.
You're sacrificing to your own gods. I remember they were worshiping the god of the moon. They were worshiping the god of the sun, especially
Jupiter.
at the time. The moon was huge to them, right?
Yeah.
So this was
total disrespect, absolutely. And then again, going in. So outside is one thing, but then going in, and to a place that they're not supposed to go. And so total disrespect. So I guess the point of spending a little time here is to show that it wasn't just an overnight thing. It was it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to a point where it was a total uproar, where we were fully invested in making sure that we try our best to get out of Roman control. And so it was so big. Again, Vespasian was the number one general in the whole Roman Empire. There has to be something really big going on for you to call your big gun, right? And so he was sent to do that. And so if we ever, get a chance to kind of go through the military campaign, where they actually start is they start up in Galilee, which is up north, right? Up north, and Vespasian and his army ends up coming through and actually, taking over all the places in northern Israel, which prior would be called where the 10 tribes were back in the day. Coming down from Galilee from the top north, and Galilee is actually where Josephus was, right? That's the place where he was, and there's a whole story behind that, but we won't get into that now. But they end up, a couple months of battle, but Vespasian is very successful in pushing and controlling the northern part of the land of Israel. So that forces the refugees that do survive, they continue to go down south and hit Jerusalem. And so Jerusalem is now full of people who are normally there as a big bustling city, but also all the refugees that are coming down from Galilee are now filling up Jerusalem. So now you have all different types of people that are in there. And so halfway through that campaign in the Roman Empire, in Roman history, this is called the year of the 4 Caesars, because there's so much, as this is going on, there's so much conflict that's happening in the Roman Empire. In 1 year, they have 4 Caesars. One becomes Caesar, and then the other side comes, overthrows him in a couple months, and someone overthrows him in a couple months, and it goes through all this whole thing. And so there's a whole bunch of chaos that's taking place. So at that point, after the 4th Caesar is done, Vespasian gets called to say, listen, we need you to come back to Rome and become Caesar. And so he stops the campaign halfway through before he gets to Jerusalem and actually goes back to Rome so that he becomes Caesar. And, it's one of those things in the sort of the modern time, you think of a general who has victories at war, they end up becoming a great candidate, to become president because he has this great resume now of being a protector of the Roman, of the Roman Empire. And so that's Vespasian. He becomes Caesar, and he leaves Titus, because the next guy, Titus, his son, to take over the campaign of continuing to squash what's happening, in the land of Israel. So Titus takes over, and at that point, he's the one who ends up having that sort of final battle at Jerusalem. Again, Jerusalem walls are fortified, very strong walls. The whole thing.
Let's go to the next slide as well.
Okay, there we go.
Because it goes into the next ones that we have. So next slide, please, moderator. Okay. Go ahead, Elder Jeffrey.
Okay. Yeah. So it's the battle itself. Again, if you're into that battle, it's very interesting to understand what takes place actually during it. The siege took about 5 months or so, and it could have gone on longer if it wasn't for the infighting that we had inside. As is noted, Jerusalem was now full of a lot of different people up from northern that had escaped when Vespasian had come and destroyed the northern part of it, or took over that. And so down in Jerusalem, there's all different types of individuals in there, and they're not really getting along, and it's hard for them to be united in their fight. But they put up a pretty good fight. We do, but finally, Titus is victorious, coming through the walls and destroying Jerusalem, as well as going into our temple.
Give some perspective to that. The walls of Jerusalem, there were 3 major walls, and they were said to be walls unbreakable. You could not get through these walls. This was the city that would never fall because of all these walls. So you see this, unfortunately, they are no longer looking to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. They're looking to this physical defense. Yeah. And this is what they were relying on. And
and they were divided. They were divided. They weren't in as the elder always teaches us, as being in one accord. And they had a lot of infighting that took place in there. Also, that also led to that. So if you get united, you can't unite yourself in praying to the God of Israel, right? You can't be off into your own little corners, against one another, and at the same time trying to pray to our Father, right? What does the scripture say? If you have any issue with your brother, go solve that issue with your brother first, then come and pray to me. And so it doesn't make it very, very difficult. So it's definitely a sad time, but we see the prophecy coming through, where they actually do encircle us, cut off our supplies, and eventually breach the wall, and like you said, several walls. So it's many battles that happen even past the first wall, then past the second wall, and there's battles that are taking place until finally, the final straw is when they actually get to the temple itself. And that's when they, this passage, when you read it, it just makes you cringe, because it's so horrible to think, going back to the words of Jesus Christ we read earlier, right, where it said, if we only knew, what was headed for us, and the destruction that would take place, it's very, very sad.
Right. Okay,
yeah, I was thinking too that a lot of it has to do with what I consider the great betrayal, because all of this is occurring after the death of Jesus, and of course we know that he was betrayed by Judas, and the consequences of that betrayal have been magnified, because we now have turned our backs, if you will, on the God of Israel, And we are now, as Officer Charmain said, looking to the physical defense or physical preparation rather than looking to the God of Israel as our Father guidance.
Yes.
And these are that limitation, if you will, is we're putting ourselves in the same category as the rest of the other nations on the face of the earth. So we suffer the consequences accordingly. I see it also as a preparation for our enslavement. And again, you will see the same family that dispersed us would have a hand in our enslavement.
Yes.
That's further down the road.
100%.
Yeah, let's get to the next slide.
So a couple of the references that we have about this time period, which Officer Charmain and I have spoken about this before. We have a couple, but one of the main sources usually is Josephus, and he's written a couple of titles. War of the Jews is one, as well as Antiquities of the Jews, I think it's called, which talks about history. And so, him as an individual, as an author, again, like any historian, you have to be critical if you read anybody's works, because it's always going to be,
Yes, I completely agree. So funny, because as you're saying this, I always, because I'm one person that, for me, I like to go as far back as possible in order to get the relevant information that's needed, because obviously the new information, a lot of it is actually corrupted because it's based on what, is very subjective based on what people need to hear.
They stop telling the truth.
Right, exactly. But I also see that when you read people like Josephus and, even Philo, I prefer Philo myself than Josephus, but when you read him, you've got to read not just what he's written, but you've got to read around him because you got to understand where he's coming from. And, some of the things I was like so disturbed by, but we spoke about this, as you said, and we kind of got clarity when it came to that. But it's you still have to read this, read his work very carefully. You can't take everything as at face value. You have to understand where he's coming from. Anyway.
So,
but one of the things that.
Sorry, I was going to say my takeaway from this, Elder Jeffrey, is the fact that when a Christian presents a cross, this is the background from which even though that Christian may not understand it, this is the background.
Yes.
Like I said, it was this invasion, if you will, that caused a lot of the corruption. I mean, we paved the way for it on our own, right? Because the great betrayal speaks for itself. But when they do that, they dangle that cross in front of you to let you know, hey, we've done it before. We can do it again if you don't be on.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Sevens for that. Sure.
He's going to read that. He's going to read this point.
Okay.
Yep. So we move from our land. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we move from our land, the price of our disobedience, right? And so this is after the walls have been penetrated, after they go in and actually roam into Jerusalem, then that's at the end of it, right? They kill a lot of people while they're there. If you read, like you said, the details of some of it, it's just horrific. I'm not even going to read it now because it's just very terrible to what the things that they did. But a part of that too that they did is that when the Romans besieged Jerusalem, the Roman general Titus at one point crucified 500 or more Jews a day. Crucified 500 or more. Crucified on the cross, right?
On the cross, right? That everybody
That's the point I'm making.
Yes, on the cross. So why would you take that cross now and now utilize it as something that's good? Understand what the message really is, like you said, Michael.
Yeah.
In fact, so many Jews were crucified outside the walls that there was not enough room for the crosses and not enough crosses for the bodies.
Wow.
Look at that, guys. This is the cross that you love to have around your neck. Think about it. Everybody's like, oh yes, this is for Jesus and no, this has such a deep implication.
Yes.
So much deeper than you can possibly think.
The same cross that is used by the Christian KKK today. And this is what I want people to understand. This is why history meets prophecy.
100%.
A continuation of the same dynamic. And we want our guests to understand, and our audience rather, to understand and appreciate what you're saying, Ella Jeffrey, so that they can connect when
Yes.
when the elder is teaching today and telling us to throw that cross, well, don't throw it away, melt it down and sell it to somebody, or whatever. Get your money back somehow. But my point is, we should not have anything to do with that damn cross. And I said damn, literally.
Yeah. So and go back. Let's go back. Like you said, Charmain, let's be very clear. This is not, we're kind of going through this history quickly. Hopefully they're not lost, on it, but can kind of follow what's going on to try to set up how much animosity there was, how much hatred there was toward us, how much, look at 500 Israelites a day. They're trying to cause, it's a message, right? It's a message that they're saying. So now, to make the connection, to understand it as us, if you are an Israelite living at this time, and I come to you with a cross, what are you going to think?
Running.
What are you thinking right now? You're like, hey, get that away. Are you kidding me? Get that away from me. Are you kidding me? What does that do, right? What are you going to think?
Oh my God.
But now if you're a Roman, and I show you the cross, right? And Roman's like, oh yeah, that's the sign of our victory. That's the sign of peace. Exactly. That's the sign of our power. Yeah. So by you embracing that, you are actually, you're cooning. Right. You're clowning, you're cooning, right? You're following it reminds me of Malcolm X, right? He says, we sick boss, what I'm saying? We sick boss, you're still enslaved to follow the mindset of your oppressor and not understanding you are actually feeding into your own demise. This is who, it's not people, this is our great grandparents who are on this thing that you're carrying around your neck. Right. And you're celebrating it. It's okay for Rome to celebrate it because that was their
victory. Yeah. Their victory token. This is what they use as their token.
I like that.
And think of it. And every time you wear it, you are saying, yes, Rome, you are victorious. That's what you're saying every time you put that around your neck and you put it on your children. That's what you're saying. You're saying Rome is victorious.
Right, and you cannot talk about the cross, and I'm just, or get the full meaning of it without looking to the Egyptians, and because that's where they got the Ankh from, and the power of the Ankh over they used to take the dead, and then bring the dead spirits, the demons, in other words, the hell boys. Let's call it what it is, right? And they use that and as a measure of success to attain their success, to destroy others. But then remember, we defeated the Egyptians as well back in the day before with Moses. So we have to understand all these things, recognize that the cross is not for us, it's against us. That's why the KKK will use it, the Christian KKK. And we have to look to what would be successful for us. The 7-branch candlestick, the double triangle, for example, is to name two of many. The Holy Scripture, you can't touch that.
Yeah, it's funny when you speak about the 7 branch. You look at history. You look at history, which people sometimes don't even believe in. But you look at history and you see what happened. They were carrying away our 7 branch.
That's right. That's right.
That was our 7 branch. Other people, they prefer to use a 9 branch, and that's okay for them.
Yeah, it works for them.
For us, the 7 branch. This is for us.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's a very good point that people need to take to note. They took our 7-branch candlestick and they gave us, well, not us here, but they gave the children of slavery the cross. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. This next slide.
Because we don't know who we are. We don't understand who we are.
They took away our 7 branch and gave us the cross.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
So, a very sad time. Again, if I read some of the details, it's just horrific. But we need to understand this to see how it all connects to where we are today. So, in victory, the Romans are in victory. They won, right? This war. The Romans slaughtered thousands of Israelites. Of those spared from death, thousands more were enslaved and sent to the toil in the mines of Egypt, and sent to Rome to work on the Colosseum. Others were dispersed to arenas throughout the empire to be butchered for the amusement of the public. So one of the things to note too is this, which 70 AD was one of 3 wars. Like historically they call it the Israelite Jewish Roman wars, and it's like 3 pieces. So this is number 1. over the course of the next 30 to 50 years, we try to come back and take it, right? And we're not going to get into the details for that now, but I'm just saying we try to. But those other things that take place, happen, going down into Egypt and Alexandria and so on and so forth. I even at the beginning talked about the direction in which Vespasian and Titus came from the north and pushed us down. And every time they would win a battle, whoever would escape would go south, go south, go south. When the destruction of Jerusalem, those that were not killed, those that were not captured, ran away. They ran south. And where did they go? Where did we always go whenever we're running away from issues in our land, right? They went down to Egypt, and they went down even further because the goal was we need to get out of the Roman territory. And so that forced us to go down deeper into what today is called Africa. And that starts our journey through the Sahara and so on and so forth. And so we can see even through the military campaign how it pushed us down south so that we actually went that direction. So just wanted to kind of show that off.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we went south. However, we also went east and we also went west. We went as far as India. Now, if you go to a place in India called Kerala, there's a place called Cochin, and there's also a place called Malabar. Back in the days, back in the time of 70 AD, actually, if you go and look at the history of India, of that region, you will see that they had what they called Jews that came after the destruction of the temple. And they called them Black Jews or Malabar Jews. Malabar was synonymous with Black Jews. So whenever you heard that term, that was the term for them. It was later on in history, I think back in the 16th and 17th, the 15th and 16th century, another set of Jews came. They called them the Parasadi Jews. And the Parasadi Jews were considered the white Jews. So there was a distinct difference between the Israelites that were there first and those that came after. So the first lot, you look at the history, these were Black Jews. And I read a book just the other day, and it was a fictional book, and it was based in that region. And in one scene, it says, and there were two Black Jews sitting on the bus. They look raggedy or whatever, but they were sitting on a bus. And I'm thinking, look, in regular fiction, you can see that as well as in history. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm just going with the identity again. The people that left were Black Jews, and they went as far as places like India, and it's documented. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yes, 100%.
It's the same point of the Charmain with Spain and Portugal. And they called them Moors because Moors was equivalent to being Black back in the day. And they settled Mauritania, that they named the land after them, all of that kind of stuff. But then you find over time, after they were kicked out in 1492 by the King of Spain and Queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Elizabeth, what's her name? Isabella. Yes. Then the other people started drifting in from the Soviet Union, as it was called back then. There was no Russia back then, and Ukraine and all those other places. So today now you have Spain and Portugal. Everybody now look the same. I mean, they may be a little bit darker than normal, but still, but it doesn't change the cultural precept or the cultural identity of the people that were there at the beginning since 700, the 7th century.
That's another really important point, because as you said, they were known as Black Jews there as well. Yes. Right? In Spain and in Portugal, they were known as Black Jews. Yeah. So that's another crucial point. Yeah, and those individuals, they were actually transported to West Africa.
Yeah, and even southern France and the southeastern portion of France, in Provence, they were there as well. And those are the ones primarily that paved the way for William to invade England in 1066. But that's a whole other chapter. But it's fascinating to see how we had a hand in all the different cultures. Not a hand that we are supposed to have, because we were supposed to go as teachers. We were supposed to go with the Bible and teaching them.
Well, we did go as teachers,
to some degree.
This is where part of the confusion lies, because we were there when the Kagan converted to to become an Israelite. Well, they call them Jews or whatever.
Right.
But he converted. He had a choice, and the Kagan was a Khazar.
Yes.
Right? He had a choice. It could have been Christianity, it could have been Islam, but he chose ours.
Yes.
He chose our way of life, our culture. Yeah. And their whole nation has held to that for dear life, to the point whereby they say they're claiming, Israel, Jerusalem, but they're not the people of the land. And anyone can tell you that they came just recently to the land.
So maybe then, in their favor, they could say after we became slaves, there was nobody else to look up to, so they took on the role. I don't know, just saying.
But it goes back to what Elder Jeffrey read earlier on.
Yeah,
it's like the Gentiles. They came and they took over the land.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, so again, very low point in our history, but it's a pivotal point because, as you said, you talked about us now going to the four corners, of the earth, and you see, so that's why there's a lot more history to tell between this point and even today, right? And there's a lot of trajectories going east to India, going down even to what we call today Africa, going even into Portugal, or going to Timbuktu, and all just exactly Mali and the various kingdoms. And so, like you said, it's almost in a similar fashion. The impact that we have even here in this new Egypt isn't just our physical labor, but we also brought our spirit and our intellect, and to be able to solve problems and build institutions and build part of the pieces of the culture, our knowledge, our wisdom, and the strength that we had, the blessings that even though we were under the curse, we still had innate blessings and power and abilities that allowed us to make every place that we are rise in their in their status, right? So wherever we were, right, like whether it was the Mali kingdom, whether it was the Moors, in Spain and Portugal, whether it was no matter where we were, we contributed in that fashion, and because of who we are. This is who we are. We build things, we create things, we have our own way of thinking, and that distinction, despite where we were, although we were no longer on our homeland. Israel really is about the people, and so wherever we were, we were able to, have
like Denise is saying, they tried to take our position, our place, and become Israel, but they couldn't because there's no covenant with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They don't even know his name, and even if they can't say it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm definitely love to continue to explore all those various points where we have been to sort of see that and explore that, because there's some fascinating stories that are there that need to be told, and we need to be
there definitely are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get to the next slide.
Yes,
this is going still in the same vein, but
they all the same.
It's just such a powerful story. I just want to make sure that we just get through this, so that we go back through it if we need to, but it's very anyways. Go ahead.
You read it? Or okay, sure. So I'll just read it first. The temple's sacred relics, all the wealth of Israel, was taken to Rome, where they were displayed in celebration of the victory, used to build the great architecture of Rome. So much gold has been taken from our temple that the price of gold throughout Syria was halved. All right. So as I mentioned before, our temple was the envy, of the whole empire. Herod, one thing he did was a great job in building that structure. Again, even at that time, we marveled, like, wow, this is something, we are so proud of our temple. And that's when Jesus said, hey, day's going to come when this is going to be totally destructed because of your disobedience. But it was rich. It was covered in gold. It was, it was very much. And so when they destroyed it, they stole. Think about that. They stole so much from us in Jerusalem that, again, the price of gold, it affected the price of gold. In addition, the big campaigns that they did, as read in the prior slide, many of us that they took and enslaved and brought to Rome, and as a campaign, like when a sporting team wins a big victory, they win the World Cup or something like that, and you have a big parade showing, hey, we won, we got the trophies, all these various things. That's what Titus did after the victory. They brought us as slaves in chains, paraded us and mocked us. They had all the gold and, like you said, the big, 7 branch candlestick, everything, and they had a big parade. And that wasn't it. They also took that money and they built what's now the Colosseum, which you can go to Italy right now and go see, and people marvel at the Colosseum. And an Arch of Titus. Also, they also built that, and we've seen pictures of it. We show pictures of it too, where you can go today and see it, and you'll see them celebrating, them taking all the evidence, stealing all the stuff out of the temple. They have pictures of it, like in the arch, showing all that.
Jeffrey, when I was looking at this, I was thinking to myself, how many times have you heard in your life that not all the Bible is true, and there's some things that's not true, and this is not true, and that's not true? Look at this.
Yeah.
This isn't even a story that we have told, right? This is a story that they have told on our behest, right? Look at this. This is the proof. This is our existence in history. This is, and we had to come from somewhere. We didn't just, magically materialize. And the funny thing is, as much as you hear this, you don't really hear so much about the Israelites going through this.
Right.
And it's the same way you don't hear about the Israelites being in the Colosseum or being eaten by lions. You don't hear that. It's always the Christians. Yeah. And it's like, they've really tried to erase us from history. They by renaming us, nobody would know that it was really us that went through all of this. And that's why we have to claim back our name. That's why we have to stop with this Christianity or whatever else that you want to call yourself. We've got to stop that and claim back our name, because if not, then everybody else is going to say or tell us what our history is, as opposed to us knowing what it is.
It's fascinating. What I think of when I'm hearing all of this, I think of the real temple. I remember the song that we used to sing, or we haven't sung it in a while, but it says, we built a house, not of wood and stone, but of flesh, and flesh and bone, not of wood and stone. So I like that. And that temple is really our Israelite nation, Worldwide Ministries. And all of us, and I think I've said this before, I'll repeat it now, each one of us as members of the Israelite nation represent a precious stone in that temple. Amen. And the glue or the cement that keeps us together is the spirit of truth. And that to me is amazing, because they can destroy all the physical stuff. They can take our name and abuse it and misuse it, but they cannot touch the temple of God. They cannot have any say in who we worship and how we worship him in spirit and in truth.
So Patricia believes that the bones beneath the Vatican are our belongs to our forefathers.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know about that either.
Yeah, I think those are probably those are other people that came, because there's a lot of people that came from Babylon. And keep in mind that Rome was called the city of not Vatican. What is it called? I forgot the name of it now. But it was a Roman city, and it was settled by the.
You're talking about the Etruscans.
The Etruscans, yes. So it was called the city of Saturn. That's what I meant to say.
And so they were doing this from way, way back. Exactly. Way back. Exactly. The Vatican was just a new addition, the latest and greatest. But they were doing this from way back.
And interesting is, so, a couple of years ago, myself and Pam went to Spain, and we went to go visit many of the historic sites that we were, and some of the cities that we built, and one of the last strongholds before Isabella and Ferdinando had kicked us out in 1492 was the Alhambra, which is in Granada, right? And we went to visit a huge compound, beautiful thing. We did a video of that prior. Interesting enough, there is after we got out, because some of the structures we built were so beautiful, although they kicked us out, they kept the structures, and then they reformed them and then put cathedrals in there and some other things in there. One of the things that the Christians did is that they actually had built a mini Colosseum that mimicked what the Colosseum is in Rome. right? Now, again, this is 1492, so this is after like maybe 1400s, 1500s, and so this is thousand or so years after. But they made a mini Colosseum, and the purpose of the mini Colosseum was for the same purpose, though, this is where the Spanish Inquisition took place. And we can do another lesson on that. But pretty much this is where they oppressed us as Israel to either renounce our God and our religion, or to be sacrificed there at that Colosseum. The same purpose the Colosseum was used for, back in Rome. So it's just interesting. And the way they funded it was by taking all the money from us that we had accounted in Spain while we were there and utilizing that to build it. So it's just interesting to see it repeat itself.
Because the next slide actually goes into what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But this is going back to 70 AD, going back again. So, Main.
So, the Fiscus Judacius was a tax collecting agency instituted to collect.
How is that? The Fiscus Judacius?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Latin for Jewish tax. Was a tax collecting agency instituted to collect the tax imposed on Israelites in the Roman Empire after the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple in AD 70. Revenues were directed to the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus in Rome. A humiliation and hardship in the Roman Empire. So a part of this too is I understand, even after that battle, killing, the crosses and the crucifixions, the enslavement, the humiliation of the parade and parading us in front of the whole Roman world, and the public humiliation, which again repeats itself even here in Egypt with the public lynchings that would take place for us here. Even after all that, continual oppression upon us is also like, if you're going to stay in this Roman Empire, you have to pay this tax.
If you are fortunate enough to live,
yes, right.
Yes, fortunate. If you are, if you defied everything and you were fortunate enough to live, this was the consequences.
Right. And the amount, here's a part of the humiliation. The amount was exactly the same amount that we, if you go back to Exodus, you sort of see the money that we would usually pay in our tithes in order to keep the uplift of the temple. So it was a part of the humiliation that money that you would usually pay for the temple, you're giving it to us now so we can build our temple. All right. And so again, just think about the humiliation of that, And again, the point is, we were enemy number one in the Roman Empire. And the point is, any of us that could would not stick around, right? Any of us that could, we would, we're trying to get out because our life was uncertain. And then our livelihood, everything around us, would be a reminder of the humiliation that took place.
Yeah, keep in mind also, to your point, though, that this is, when Jesus was born, they were going to Jerusalem to pay their taxes, right? To make that. And this is why we know he wasn't born in December. Because, there's taxes weren't always gold and silver. They had to take crops as well. And so on. You pick some of your lettuce, your tomatoes, whatever, and you took some to pay their taxes. The other point is that when on the hill that was called Vaticanus back in the day of the Etruscans, only significant Romans were buried in that area. Like people like us, we are just slaves. We won't be buried there. So they want the rulers or what they consider would be important Romans to be buried in that area. That is why they built their temple, their obelisk, whatever they want to call it, on top of that hill, because they have the bodies of the significant ones that were already there. They can just extract that spirit using their cross, and so on and so forth. And the rest is history.
Yes. So what is this message that Patricia's put here?
She's saying, let me read it. I heard there's a city in Italy where they do the parade and still two groups of people, one dressed as the Romans and the other people in black face masks. Wow. I didn't know that.
I didn't know. I'd love to know more about that. Yeah, wow. I'd love to know more about that.
I do know that there's a parade and they're all dressed like Klansmen with that thing to the pinnacle, whatever they call it, that they wear. I know that one occurs not only in Rome, it occurs in Spain as well. And But anyway, and they all have the cross and do all these crazy things. But that's their heritage. That's how they got this success. That's how they serve their God. And even though it's disgusting, I still have to give them credit for it personally, because they are being disciplined. They are recognizing the gift of their God, even if though that gift is the demise of our forefathers, you know. And now we have to make sure that that does not repeat itself. We have to stay with the given instructions and call on our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. This ties into the monetary aspect.
Mhm.
As you said, continuation of the humiliation.
Yes. Yes. Humiliation, hardships in the room, right? So the Evidia Capta, or the Evidia Davita, meaning Judea has been conquered and Judea has been defeated, were engraved around the rim for each coin. So the coins that were printed, and this is Vespasian, he ended up becoming Caesar. And by the way, after Titus's victory, when Vespasian moves on, Titus then becomes Caesar. So both of these individuals' pathway to become Caesar was their stepping stone, was their victory over us. That's how they became Caesar. And so in that, they are also, again, this is years after the actual battle is fought. They still are humiliating us by even the very money that we have to use in commerce is going to mimic, is going to, bring out that humiliation of us. So again, we were enemy number one. So in every arena, and all the propaganda and the money, just in business and everywhere that it was, it wasn't a good day to be an Israelite in the Roman Empire, at all. And, a part of this too is we talked about earlier how we see how some of these same tactics repeat itself over and over and over again. And even here in this new Egypt, we see this very same thing where there's a lot of the money that's out there during that time of enslavement shortly thereafter, which would have, pictures of slaves on the cotton field and, and different things like that showing our humiliation. There was the whole thing with lynching, and they would have postcards. They would utilize those pictures of lynchings of us and the public humiliation of us, not just for that one incident, but also to perpetuate it all throughout the nation to kind of show this is where we are as a people. That's what they think about us. So I think we can in some ways relate to what, it's just a horrific time for us to be, an Israelite at this day. We were enemy number one, and they never let us forget it.
Okay, let's get to the next slide. Okay. And I think this is also very important because it shows you the depth of their, I guess, their response to us and how much they wanted to humiliate us. But it also ties in so closely and so strongly with prophecy, because as much as prophecy says that, we shall see that land, we shall see that land no more again. We shall not return to that land. These guys were also doing the same thing. They were carrying out the prophecy. We don't want you to be associated with this land. We're going to change the name of the land. We're going to change the name of the people. We're going to, you're not allowed to worship your God. You're not allowed to do these. Everything that you do is in direct contradiction to what you're supposed to do. So just as you said earlier, we're paying the 10% to for the upliftment of our temple. Now we're paying it to them. And just how we have our unleavened bread, we now have hot cross buns. Guys, same thing. It's the same thing time and time again. But please go on, Elder Jeffrey.
Yeah. So, so that was then. So like you said, we tried a few more times after 70 AD to take the land back. And as a matter of fact, there were a lot of other battles that took place. There were like pretty much 3 wars that took place over the course of maybe like 100 years. And so in the final response, Emperor Hadrian had said, we're going to totally destroy and flatten everything that's there that wasn't already there. They plowed over the ruins of Jerusalem. They outlawed circumcision in the whole empire. They renamed the city to try to disconnect us, any connection to it. No more Judea or Israel, anything like that.
Elder Jeffrey, I want people to understand exactly what's taking place. When we're talking about plowing over, they took our temple and they put it to rubble. It rubble. They, the big things that you just like, and everything turns to dust. That was where the temple. That was what it looked like then. right? So
Yes.
you don't even know where it was.
Yeah.
In addition to that, in addition to turning that to rubbles, they burnt the place. They actually chained it off, that you weren't allowed to go into the city, and they set it alight. It burned. So this is how, anyways.
Yep.
Just even
No, and so this is in response to us going back and trying to go back and trying to get it back. And like you said, what it says, you will see it no more again. So
That's
even
right.
though you will try, they this is their response. So they flattened it, like you said. They changed the name. All right, a yellow Capitolina.
Alia Capitolina.
Thank you.
Alia,
Yes.
yeah, I practiced this, okay?
Good.
Alia Capitolina and Palestinia.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Palestine. There, that the name, that was when it was renamed.
Yes, totally right, to totally disconnect us. And they also outlawed us from being there. And in some
Yes.
of the verbiage it says outlawed us from even being ice, like we couldn't even be eyesight of it, right? They were nowhere near it, right? So again, they wanted to totally move us from it altogether. They even imported individuals to go and settle in the land. So that it could be populated. Sounded very similar to what the Assyrians did to Israel when they removed us from the northern kingdom. They had other people go back there and settle in the land, and so they did the very same thing. In other words, they replaced us with other people, right? That were there, but they wouldn't allow us to come back there at all.
Yes.
Kind of like what they did recently, anyways. But that's
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, so it's just the measures that they went to, and just to put into people's mind how much, of an enemy of the state we were considered as a people, and in Rome.
Next slide.
Yes. Yeah, let's get to the next slide.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It brings us back to this again, obviously. Never forgetting where we came from and the prophecy that was made, and a prophecy that's on many people's mouths today, but
Yes.
do they really understand the depth and the significance of this prophecy?
Yep.
We hear people going back there, we hear people, all kinds of stuff, but it's like, you know what, why that? As I said before, we've been there, we've done it, we got the t-shirt, we don't need to go back. We need to establish our connection with our God and learn how to follow his laws, statutes, and commandments. And again, we thank our elder Shadrach Porter for actually reviving this culture, because without him, most of us, a lot of us will probably be trying to get back there as well.
I'd be a mess. No, that's good. And you know what I like about it, again, I'm seeing the picture in its fullness, because behind the Romans, behind Christianity, I said behind, and I'm not saying that because this person is playing a miniature role. This person is the superior person. He is the director, and he is manipulating all these people, people that practice Christianity, people, the Roman Empire, the Greeks, all of them is Satan and his hellboys. They are all manipulating these guys. The only thing is they don't know. But it's written in our prophetic books. It's also written in our history books, and it's written in our culture that this would occur. And it has occurred. And I'm glad that somebody else is there now. They can call themselves whatever they want. Like we said earlier, they don't know the name of our Father. So thanks to our elder Shadrach for teaching us and sharing us this history, the culture. Thank you, Elder Jeffrey, as well, because without all of this combination, we could be, as Officer Charmain said, I know I would be, if I speak for myself, in a state of confusion, because I did not know anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you, Elder Shadrach, for standing tall and being the champion to give us the light to understanding. And then some people, you may look at this verse and saying like, oh, you're putting things together. But the one reason that we're here spending time on this is to see, you have to see how this all comes together, right? When this is written, it's prophecy. But for us, it's history. And we can show you step by step by step how this is fulfilled. We can show you
them together.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and likewise myself, I'm truly grateful to our elder Shadrach for his knowledge, his wisdom, and his understanding. And as I said before, guys, if you want to, get a grasp before you actually look at this video, go to the one that we did last week, the difference between the Israelis and the Israelites. And again, you can download a copy of the documentation from our elders' website, which is shadrachporter.com. Once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to thank Abby, who was our moderator. And don't forget to like, to comment, to share, to subscribe. Oh, Mike, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all right.
That's all right. Yes,
Anyway, so, anyways, but I want to thank everyone. Elder Jeffrey, any last words?
Yeah, I would say this. We spend a lot of time talking about our destruction, and we see how it fits the prophecy. But understand, the prophecy is also our redemption, which we are living out as we speak. So don't get stuck just on that. That's just to show who we are. What we really hold on to is the hope and understanding and clarity that the prophecy of our upliftment is not if, it's when. And so I'm glad to be on the winning side.
Amen.
Thank you. And peace, everyone.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.